Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I am Naren Arulraja, the founder of the Veterinary Business Podcast and one of the co-hosts. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders. We cover a wide range of topics, including practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, HR best practices, and much more. Whether you are a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. And remember, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms. Today, I have an exciting guest with me, and the topic we're going to be talking about is the personal growth journey of veterinary leaders. And my guest today is Rachel. Rachel, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Who are you? How did you get into veterinary medicine? And of course, what do you do right now in the veterinary field? And how do you help veterinary practices?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me. So I've worked with the veterinary profession for 11 years and not a veterinary professional myself, but I've certainly developed an intimate understanding of the veterinary world and its challenges and its habits. I offer a unique blend of services. So I have a leadership coaching service, and also I am the owner of a veterinary headhunting firm. So I'm a recruitment specialist as well. I've been coaching veterinary professionals now for 7 years, and my focus in more recent years has been coaching veterinary leaders and helping them to master the 5 pillars of inspirational leadership so they can elevate themselves and inspire change and show up and serve really powerfully. I am driven by quite a big mission, which is to make the career of being a veterinary professional something that is sustainable and fulfilling, to make being a vet or being a veterinary nurse the top role out there to be in for job satisfaction and fulfillment and happiness. And I believe that starts with great leadership, which is why I focus on leaders.
Thank you. So I think the topic, the personal growth journey of veterinary leaders, is a wonderful topic, and I'm really looking forward to dive into it. Let me ask you a question. What makes a great leader in veterinary medicine?
I think what makes a great veterinary leader now is worlds apart to what made a great leader even 5 years ago. It's changing rapidly.
Maybe let's start with that. What has changed? What made a great veterinary leader, let's say 5 years ago versus today? That way we can really kind of then talk about, what makes a great leader today.
Of course. So I think there's been a shift from traditional management of people, which is, organization and planning and telling people what to do, and perhaps that element of leading with fear, to leadership, which is relationships focused and about motivating and empowering and guiding and coaching people and leading more with love in the forefront of our minds. The response.
Why do you think that changed? Why do you think that is required now more so than, let's say, 5 years ago?
I think it has come from the people working in the profession that realized they deserved better. And, leadership is always changing, but I think it was just slow moving in the veterinary world, certainly in the UK. And even in the last 6 years, I've seen so many shifts that have come from within, from the people working within, such as an embracing flexibility for working parents, and just younger people coming out of veterinary school demanding more respect and wanting to be treated like human beings.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is this idea that, especially after COVID, people saying, I don't want to, take what I'm given. I want to create the life I want. Mm-hmm. And if you can help me create the life I want, then of course I'll be part of your organization. If not, see you, right? In other words, people are more interested in purpose. People are more interested in satisfaction. Things perhaps nobody thought of. I don't know if nobody, but a lot of people didn't think of pre-COVID, because COVID just shook a lot of people to who am I? Why am I here? What do I want to do with my life? and get them to ask those questions. And I think, and the answers are, well, I'm not going to settle. I'm going to go after my dreams. I'm going to go after what I want. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing you paraphrase is this is not just in veterinary medicine, but across the world in all kinds of industries and vocations and careers and whatnot. People asking those questions. So of course they're asking it in veterinary medicine. So if you as a practice owner cannot answer the question, why am I here? Am I happy? Am I making a difference? Am I able to have the life I want? Like you talked about flexible time. So
Mm.
if the answer is not no for more than a few, then they're like, well, I'm not going to stick around. As opposed to pre-COVID, they just this is the way it is. Everybody needs a job. You have to do it. Like that's the way people thought. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. People did a lot of soul searching, and it shocked people into a state of, well, first of all, surrender, because there wasn't much we could do when COVID happened,
Hmm.
and then reflection, and no longer tolerating what they tolerated before. And COVID did make some employers stand out more than others in terms of how they handled it, and how someone does anything is how they do everything. So I think it just highlighted and magnified a lot of things, but people, yeah, want
Yeah,
something a lot more meaningful now.
right. Let me ask you this. All the quote unquote big companies are saying you need to come back to work and it's business as usual. Like, we're going back to normal, quote unquote. And I heard in countries like Australia, they're saying, well, if you don't come back, you're not going to get raises. Or we're going to have two different pay structures for the people who work from home versus the ones who come into office. So they're trying to get people back. And of course, I don't know about UK specifically, but at least in the US and Canada, the interest rates went up. So everything became, more difficult. Your home payments went up, your rents went up. So
Yeah.
people now need the money. Like, in other words, there's no more, fun and games. And I know after COVID, a lot of people spent tons of money on hotels and travel. And during COVID, they spent a ton of money on pets. But now I was talking to a friend of mine in hotels. He's like, well, things are back to 2019 level. Actually, it's less than 2019 because people don't have money. Same thing with veterinary practices, right? All the doctors who had an abundance of patients, now they're like, well, it's hard, it's a lot more demanding now. Again, going back to 2019 levels, or even less. Do you see that happening in the UK as well? I'm just describing what I see in Canada and the US.
Hmm. Not as much, no. I think, yes, there was a big pet ownership boom, and I
Right.
think we're still riding that wave. Yes, there was has been and still is a cost of living crisis, which I think has made pet owners a little bit more cautious. But um,
So I guess, are you seeing same revenues as during COVID versus pre-COVID levels, like right now? I mean, per practice and so forth.
yes, yeah, I think the only time that I'm seeing practices have a dip in any revenue is the traditional January lull,
Right.
just after Christmas. But it's not quite as busy as it was immediately post COVID, but it's not gone back to how it used to be. There are still practices that have closed their books to new patients, for example,
Okay.
and have been, or yeah, trying to maintain some sort of sense of balance.
Right.
And lots of new practices opening, independent ones.
Right. Now, coming back to the people question, right? In the US and Canada, the employees are hoping, at least the big ones, that people will be back to normal and they'll show up in the office and it's like 2019. Is that it's not happening? People haven't come around, but that's what the companies want and that's what they are pushing for, right? Do you think that's happening in the UK? And do you think things will go back to normal, or do you think it's a new normal when it comes to like you talked about leadership versus management and control and fear and those kinds of things? Do you think the new normal is here to stay, at least in the UK, or do you think it'll swing back to the way things used to be?
I think there is the risk of slipping back to old ways, because I think that's what the veterinary profession in the UK is quite good at, the
Mm,
status quo. However, I think the people working in the profession are um, standing by what they feel is right, and it will keep moving forward, but it does need leaders to keep it moving forward. Um, you mentioned there about home working, and that's not something that's been embraced at all, really, in the UK.
Mm. So UK, everybody just goes to the shop, right? Goes to the place of work. Because I remember running into people who are on, their holiday trips to, different countries like, Sri Lanka, where have made some trips. So that, and when I talk to them, they're like, well, we work and then we go on holiday, right? So that's kind of the work, meaning go to office. And then, of course, then go on holiday for X. So that's the pattern. So
Mm.
is that shifting? Is it more like, well, I also want to work from home, I want to have flexibility, or is that just still a novel concept in the UK?
Yeah, no, I haven't. It's not happening here in that way. No.
So still people go to the shop, like go to the office?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay,
You know,
okay,
a good
okay.
95%. I think there are certain businesses out there that have set up, doing telehealth or
Right.
some form of home working, but not a lot.
So that's just a tiny like that was kind of like, certain industries, but not the general trend. Got
Yeah.
it. Got it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. So I guess you were not impacted. I think maybe the North America there was more places where they said don't come to office, stay at home. Like they encouraged almost like not going to the office for
Mm.
like, months and months and maybe like a year or so. So I think that's why people just got used to it. But you're saying that perhaps is not the case in the UK. So coming back to the interview question. So knowing today practices are craving or employees are craving leadership as opposed to management, which is more fear-based, and leadership is inspiration and helping me achieve my goals based. What makes a great leader today?
I think what makes a great leader today is that great leaders or inspirational leaders, I think, is what's required now. I think, and those are people that are prepared to stand up, stand out, and be the change they want to see and challenge the status quo, and doing it for them, the people in their practice, but also the wider profession. And that takes a lot of courage. Because the status quo is a very comfortable place to be. I really see veterinary leaders today shaping the next 10 years of the profession in the UK and in
Right.
other places. And that's a big job.
Right. So talk about that. Give us some examples. What do you mean? What are the things they're doing that takes courage that perhaps didn't happen, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah. So flexibility, work-life balance, not just conforming to the traditional 5-day week. The 4-day week is very much embraced in the UK now. Different working patterns for working parents or people that just want more flexibility in their role. The different ways of engaging with clients. For example, there's a number of practices in the UK that have transitioned into more of a subscription service. So you pay per month and then you have all your veterinary care. So
Mm,
removing the barriers between vets and clients and their pets. Um, so it is really about just being brave enough to try different things. Just because it's been done a certain way all this time doesn't mean you can't do it differently now.
yeah, that makes sense. That's totally making sense. So what are some of the common growing pains or challenges that veterinary leaders are facing today? Like in your work, I assume there are those ideal practices, the ones with courage, who are showing leadership, who are doing things differently, either when it comes to the people, employees, or the parents. Um, but then there are those who are still in the old ways. So what are some of the challenges that they are facing? And where do they start? I'm sure like they can't do everything tomorrow, and they can't be this perfect leader, right? Or perfect establishment. So what's a good place to get going?
Yeah, I think based on the work I do with leaders, I think the biggest challenge that if you can master it will take you very far, which is this talk of personal growth. Um, People, when you step into a leadership role, you reveal aspects of yourself that you never even knew existed, and it's a real transformative process that holds up a mirror to both your really positive habits but also your negative habits and behaviors, and forces you to confront and evolve. That combined with the fact that certainly in the UK, vets or nurses that transition into leadership roles aren't always given leadership training before they do that. So it's a big shock to the system because suddenly the expectations of them are much bigger. The relationship dynamics change. There's a real lack of preparation, which makes the learning curve much steeper, let's say.
Got it. So
Yeah.
let's kind of break it up a little bit. So first one is you're saying you can't help somebody till you know how to help yourself. You can't lead others till you know how to lead yourself. So you're
Indeed.
saying it's looking inwards, learning how to even notice your opportunities for growth and what's holding you back, and being able to do something about it, being able to work on it, being able to change yourself. Because how do you ask somebody else to change when you don't change, right? uh,
Yes.
and again, in this inspirational world, you can't just preach at people and yell at people. You have to make them want to do it. So the number one thing is you have to know how to do it yourself, because if you can't, then how do you inspire them? Because at least with you can be tough with yourself, but with others, if you yell at them, they're going to quit and go find a job somewhere else. So how do you inspire them to do the same thing? So in that part of your work, how does it look like? Is it 6 months, 1 year? Is it like some kind of a, I don't know, self-evaluations? And I know they talk about emotional intelligence and self-awareness and all those buzzwords which everyone talks about, but still we do the same old things we always do, right? So how do you go about helping somebody with, you know, personal development?
Mm. It definitely always starts with awareness, and a key model or a key concept that I introduced to people quite early on in coaching is the work of Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, Noreen.
No, I know the word hero's journey. I've heard of it, but I haven't really read that book. So I'm going to like read it or download it as you speak on my
Yes.
Audible.
Yeah, admittedly, I don't think I've ever really got around to reading the book myself, but the concept was shared with me by a mentor years ago, and it's stuck with me ever since. It's a storytelling framework that most major movies and myths and legends are based on. You'll never watch a movie the same way again. And it describes the common stages that a hero undergoes when they go on their adventure. And it starts with the status quo and then the call to grow, some sort of discomfort or challenge or a problem that you now have to pay attention to, which you can also refuse. However, life will just bring you more of the same. And then you cross the threshold into the unknown, you slay your dragons and you become the hero of your journey. But in the middle of all of that, there's a metaphorical death and rebirth of who you are, including, identity, habits, behaviors, mindsets, thinking, all of those. And then a permanent transformation, and you return home the hero of your journey. But this is a cycle that we go through many times, sometimes multiple times in a year. And I have to get people to embrace the growth cycle so they know that it's not going to be easy, and to start embracing the challenges that come with it.
Right.
And then it is about deep self-discovery. It is about, how am I showing up? What do I want to achieve? How am I creating the results that in my team already? It's embracing that their team is a reflection of them, however much they don't want to hear that. Not in every way, shape, and form, but like you said earlier, you can't expect things from people if you can't do those things yourself. You
Right.
can't take people places you are not prepared to take yourself.
Right.
So quite often people will come with specific challenges, but then we go on a whole journey of, what is this about and where did this come from and how is it showing up today and shaping your leadership? What stories did you bring with you? um, and really unraveling it all so they can let go of what is not working, and step into who they want to become.
Mm-hmm. One thing that you're reminding me of is two things. Well, actually, one is I have heard of the hero's journey from a marketing perspective. There's this concept called story brand, where you like pretty much playbook. So like, how do you tell a story that's successful, and then you can use that for marketing? But that's a totally side note. I'm a
Yeah.
marketing geek, so I'm
That's so true.
fascinated by that stuff. Yeah. The second part that comes to mind is when you talked about hero's journey. I assume this book is about self-transformation. Is that what it is? This Campbell's book. I just downloaded it, but I haven't, of course, I haven't read it or I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe it is about
Okay.
personal growth. Yeah, that's his
Personal
book.
growth. Okay, great, great. Yeah, thank you so much. So the other thing you mentioned early on is you said there are two parts. One is self-growth, and the other one is imagine you take somebody who's doing X, let's say day-to-day work, maybe they're taking care of, there's a vet tech or, somebody doing day-to-day work. And all of a sudden you change their relationship, you call them the office manager or give them a leadership role, but you never train them, you never prep them. You never talked about what the differences are. You never really helped them grow into it. Then all of a sudden you expect them to act differently and they don't know how to do it. And that is like, disaster. And more than likely that person will quit or will be such a disaster. You will end up, demoting them, which means they can't stay there anymore because they lose face and they quit anyway. So it's a disaster. So do you see that lack of preparation when helping others, transition into leadership roles? Still the kind of the norm, like majority of the time there's not enough thought put into it and not structure around it, and then things blow up? Or do you think things are getting better?
I'd like to say that I think things are getting better, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I think, with the growing presence of corporates, there is more structure to leadership development, but it is still very much about courses and the theory of leadership, when actually you grow in the job, on the job, through the challenges, in the trenches of adversity. So it's missing the experiential learning. So you can learn all the theory, and veterinary professionals are great at that because that's what you do to become a vet, right?
Yeah.
But it's then applying it in real life challenges. And that is the missing piece that I'm looking to insert.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So that try something, go back and think about it, talk about it, see what you can learn from it. How do you improve it? So that type of experiential learning.
Yeah, absolutely. In the
Right.
job, on the job.
Right.
As you face the challenges, and then also working with a mentor, someone who's 10 years more experienced than you and has walked this path before, or a community of leaders, or a coach, for example.
Right. If you are, let's say, a leader who is very self-aware, let's say you invest in people, especially as you help them take on leadership roles, what are some of the other things you think they should still do to kind of continue to be an awesome leader of people?
I think that we should always be choosing new resources or experiences that feel really scary to us. So there's a danger at any level of learning that we can choose learning opportunities that are pretty comfortable, reading a self-help book, doing another course. We're very good at thinking we need to do another course to take ourselves to the next level. But actually, think outside the box. And I had a client who really wanted to improve their confidence. And so he decided to take a public speaking course, which was just his worst nightmare. But it made him step into a situation that was so uncomfortable, also to learn new skills at the same time, and boosted his confidence. Someone else decided to go and do a stand-up comedian course, to help them communicate better at work as a leader. So it's choosing things that don't feel easy and consciously choosing to stretch yourself in ways that you haven't before.
Right. Makes sense. Let me, I think, as we bring this to a close, I want to ask somebody's listening to this podcast and they really loved what you had to say and they wanted to take some immediate next steps. So what do you think, what can veterinary leaders do to navigate their personal and professional growth effectively? What books or resources do you recommend as a starting point? Because I know this is not like they listen to this and all of a sudden they're new people, right? Mm-hmm. This is just maybe getting them to start thinking about certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we've talked about it already, but embracing the hero's journey, really understanding what that is all about, because as soon as you recognize it, you see how you've traveled that cycle in the past and perhaps where you are on that cycle already, and it gives new meaning to the challenges that you're currently facing. So if it resonates with you, I definitely recommend. I think coaching skills for leaders are very important. And I know I'm saying that as a coach, but it's one of those skills that will allow you to get the very best out of people. So I recommend, I haven't got the book with me, but there are various coaching skills books out there that will help you to ask the right questions to get different answers from your team that perhaps you haven't been able to pull out of them before. And again, as I say, nothing can compare to fully immersing yourself in experiential learning. So not taking another leadership course, but being part of a community of leaders, a mastermind group where you all are there to stretch each other, engage with a mentor, someone who's walked this path before, and just constant self-reflection, because self-mastery is the foundation of great leadership. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, Rachel. Any way people can get a hold of you? We're going to include your 2 websites in the show notes, but anything you want to leave with them that they can just remember and go to if they want to kind of follow up with you or talk to you?
Yes, of course. Simplyveterinarycoaching.com, of course. I also am quite active on LinkedIn. You can find me under Rachel Paul. On my website is where I put a lot of my blogs around these topics that we've talked about today, which are a good resource too. But you can email me also, rachel@simplyveterinarycoaching.com. And I'd love to have a chat with you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Really appreciate your time and your expertise and the topic, the personal growth journey of veterinary leaders. I also want to take a moment to thank our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. We cannot do what we do without you. If you like our podcast, please share it with your colleagues and friends on social media. Also, don't hesitate to write a review for us because that'll help other people also find us. Your reviews can be written either on iTunes or Google Play, any of your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and, of course, pet parents. Wishing all of you an amazing week ahead. This is Naren, your co-host.